They say Bloom Girls Academy is one of the best in the state, disciplined, prestigious, clean, the kind of school politicians send their daughters to, the kind that looks good on scholarship applications and keeps secrets buried beneath polished floors and stern smiles. I didn't belong there. I knew at the moment I stepped off the rickety school shuttle with my single box of belongings and looked up at the dark, ivy-covered buildings stretching toward the grey sky. The place was cold. Not in temperature, though it was freezing, but in feeling. It was too quiet, too still, like the walls were watching. I'm Linda, 15. My mother got me in with a government welfare scholarship after she took a job abroad. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, I got Dormitory B. Most of the other dorms were in newer buildings. Warm lighting, decent furniture, busy girls laughing in groups. But Dorm B sat far off to the edge of the campus, past the assembly hall and through a small iron gate that was always kept half shut. Its bricks were darker, the windows were higher and smaller, and the hallway smelled like a mixture of old bleach and damp stone. It's temporary, the matron, Miss Ellen, said flatly when I asked why I was being placed there. You'll be comfortable enough if you don't cause trouble. I didn't push it. My room was at the very end of the second-floor corridor. The floors creaked with every step. The doors had old brass knobs that groaned when you turned them. My roommate, Nessa, barely looked up when I entered. She was seated on her bed, writing in a small leather-bound notebook, with one earbud in and her knees tucked to her chest. You must be Linda, she said without turning. Yeah. She looked up and smiled weakly. Lucky you. I didn't understand what she meant then. The first few days passed in a blur. Lessons were strict, meals were silent, and Dorm B followed rules that didn't apply to the rest of the school. For one, the dorm doors were locked from the outside, at 9 p.m. sharp, not figuratively, actually locked with keys by Miss Ellen herself. A solid click echoed down the hallway every night like a final warning. We weren't allowed to open our windows either, and unlike other dorms, there were no mirrors, not in the bathrooms, not even in the lockers. We are under refurbishment, Miss Ellen said when I asked, but something about her expression felt off, like she'd rehearsed the answer. And then there was the tapping. It started 4 nights after I arrived. Faint, rhythmic tapping, soft but sharp, under the bed, like someone lightly knocking from beneath the wooden frame. I froze the first time I heard it, convinced I was imagining things. I sat up, straining to listen. Tap, 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 tap. I swung my legs over the side and leaned down slowly, heart thumping. The space under the bed was dark, but empty. I told Nessa the next morning. She didn't laugh. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she closed her notebook, leaned forward, and whispered, "They don't like noise." Who? She glanced toward the door. The ones who make the list. I thought she was joking, but she didn't smile. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the taps. The air felt thick, like the room had shrunk. Sometime after midnight, I heard something else, a low hum, like someone humming a lullaby through a wall. I couldn't tell where it came from. I sat up and looked at Nessa. Her bed was empty. I waited until morning to tell someone. I knocked on Miss Ellen's office door during breakfast. She opened it halfway and stared at me with cold, glassy eyes. My roommate didn't sleep in her bed last night, I said. I think she's missing. She transferred, she said immediately. No hesitation. What? She was moved to a different school. Her parents requested it last week. Her record was withdrawn. Nothing to worry about. But her stuff is still here. Her books, her shoes, her toothbrush. Miss Ellen raised an eyebrow. Do you think we are lying? I didn't know what to say. She smiled faintly. I suggest you focus on your studies. Linda, Dorm B is not for girls who like to ask too many questions. She closed the door. That night, I checked the closet. Nessa's belongings were untouched. Her notebooks still stacked on the table. Her cardigan still draped over the chair. I opened her leather notebook. Most of the pages were blank, except one. A single sentence, scrawled in frantic handwriting across the middle of the page. They choose at night. I slammed it shut and backed away. The tapping started again. This time louder, more impatient. Tap, tap, tap. And then, just before the lights cut out for curfew, I heard the softest whisper under my bed. A voice so faint it was barely human. It said, "You're next." The next morning, I woke up drenched in sweat. The words from Nessa's notebook echoing in my head. They choose at night. I didn't go to class. Instead, I sat on my bed staring at the closet. Nessa's shoes were still there. Her notebooks. Her coat. Her life, untouched, as if she'd just stepped out for breakfast. Only, no one else seemed to notice. At lunch, I asked a girl from the main dorms if she knew Nessa. She looked confused. Nessa? Yes, she was in Dorm B. There's no Nessa on the student register, she said, frowning. But she was here just 2 days ago. She blinked, then gave me a careful look, like I'd said something dangerous. I don't think you should talk about that, she whispered. Then she got up and walked away. Back in the dorm, the atmosphere felt different. Thicker. The lights buzzed overhead. The hallway outside was unusually quiet, like the building was holding its breath. I made a decision. That evening, after dinner, I faked a stomach ache and asked to be excused early. Miss Ellen gave me a hard look, but nodded. I returned to the dorm and waited until the final bell rang, and the doors were locked for the night. Then I got to work. I searched Nessa's side of the room thoroughly. Behind the furniture, under the mattress. I checked the baseboards and floor tiles. Nothing, until I remembered the tapping. It had always come from under her bed. I pulled the bed frame away from the wall and dropped to my knees. The floor was wooden, old, with deep grains and scuffs from decades of use. I ran my fingers along the edges, then stopped. One of the floorboards was looser than the rest. I pried it up. Beneath it, barely visible in the darkness, was a metal ring embedded in a wooden panel. A trapdoor. My pulse started to race. I pulled it open slowly. The hinges groaned like a scream muffled by dirt. A narrow wooden ladder led down into pitch blackness. The air that rose up from below was cold, stale, and smelled faintly of rusted metal and wet concrete. I grabbed my torchlight and descended. The space below Dormitory B was a long, narrow basement corridor, lined with crumbling brick and a damp cement floor. Water dripped from overhead pipes. Cobwebs clung to the corners like thin fingers. I moved slowly, shining the light ahead of me. There were old crates stacked against the walls, broken chairs, school furniture from decades ago, and something else, a row of rusted lockers. But when I opened the first one, I nearly vomited. Inside were neatly folded school uniforms, stained with dried blood and marked with faded name tags, names I'd seen on the old class rosters in the library. Girls who'd gone missing, girls who had transferred. I opened another locker, then another. Same thing, uniforms, personal items, old notebooks, cracked glasses, even a teddy bear with its eyes scratched out. The school had kept everything. I reached the final locker at the end of the row. It was slightly ajar. I pulled it open. It was empty, except for a large, sealed envelope taped to the inside wall. Written in bold black marker across it were 3 words: next term list. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Headshots of girls, students. Some I recognized from the school grounds. Others, I didn't. Each photo had a red X drawn over the face, but one photo at the back wasn't crossed out yet. It was mine. I dropped the envelope in horror. That's when I heard it. A soft, dragging sound. Footsteps. Someone was in the basement with me. I spun around and shut off the flashlight. I backed into the shadows, holding my breath. From the far end of the corridor, I saw a faint figure enter the space. Tall, thin, wearing a grey skirt and black shoes. It was Miss Ellen. She wasn't carrying a flashlight. She didn't seem to need one. She walked slowly past the lockers, humming faintly. I ducked behind a crate, heart pounding. Then she stopped, right next to the open trapdoor, and whispered, almost lovingly, "Your curiosity will kill you, Linda." She turned and walked back into the darkness. I waited for what felt like hours before I dared climb back up. When I emerged in the dorm room, the trapdoor was sealed shut behind me. The metal ring, gone. The floorboard had been nailed back down, like it had never been there at all. The next morning, I woke to find Nessa's side of the room completely cleared out. No shoes, no notebooks, no coat, just an empty bed. And on my pillow was a single photograph, a grainy black and white still. It showed me, standing in the basement, staring at the envelope. The camera angle was from above, from the corner of the room. I hadn't seen any cameras, but someone had been watching me the entire time. I didn't sleep the night I found the photo on my pillow. Couldn't. I sat in bed, staring at the grainy image of myself holding that envelope underground, knowing someone had been watching me from the shadows, filming, studying. Miss Ellen hadn't said anything the next morning, just stared at me in assembly, her mouth neutral, her eyes cold and unreadable. But I knew. She knew that I knew. And now I had a target on my back. I considered running, climbing the fence, disappearing into the woods that bordered Bloom Girls Academy. But how far could I get? The school was hours from the nearest town. No internet. No cell phones allowed. And besides, I couldn't stop thinking about what was underneath the dorm. The old lockers, the sealed envelopes, the uniforms covered in dried blood. I had to expose it, even if no one believed me, even if it meant going back down. That night, I waited until lights out. When I was sure the building had gone silent, I pulled the nails from the floorboard, one by one. I'd hidden a pair of metal nail pullers in my mattress. It took half an hour, but I got the trapdoor open again. The basement looked darker than before. Still, rotten, colder. I climbed down. I had a plan this time. I brought an old Nokia phone with a camera. No Wi-Fi, but it could still take pictures. I needed proof. The world had to see what this school was hiding. As I crept through the corridor, I paused at the row of rusted lockers. One of them, the last one, was slightly open again. Inside was a folded uniform. The name tag read, L. Tessie. My name, freshly stitched. I backed away. My breath caught in my throat. That's when I heard it. A muffled sound, like someone whimpering. It came from behind the crates, past a door I hadn't seen before. Heavy, steel, industrial looking. A keypad bolted to the frame. I stared at it. 3 attempts, then a red lockout. I took a guess. I typed in the school's founding year, 1972. Nothing. I tried again, 1209, our dorm number. Click. The lock released. I pulled the door open slowly. The smell hit me first, damp mold, sweat, and old wood. Inside was a small, windowless chamber. Stone floor. One bare mattress on the ground. A plastic bucket in the corner. Chains. And a girl. Skinny. Pale. Bruised wrists. Her hair matted to her face. She squinted at the light, shielding her eyes. I froze. Who are you? I whispered. Her voice came out hoarse. I'm Hannah. I was in Dorm C. I've been here. I don't know how long. I dropped to my knees and began unlocking the shackles. We have to go. Now. She grabbed my arm. You shouldn't have come back. They'll know. They always know. I helped her up the ladder and out of the dorm. We didn't bother being quiet. Every part of me screamed we were being watched. We made it through the rear garden, past the abandoned greenhouse, and onto the footpath that led to the woods. We ran. Branches cut at our faces. Thorns tore through our uniforms. But we didn't stop. After an hour of running, we reached the main road. A battered roadside sign read, East Wind Police Station, 6 miles. When we stumbled into the station, the officer at the front desk took one look at us, muddy, bleeding, wild-eyed, and brought us in without a word. We told them everything. About Dorm B, the trapdoor, the basement, the photos, the girl in the cell. They took our statements, called a task force. An hour later, a convoy of police cruisers was heading back to the school. But when we arrived, It was already too late. Dormitory B had been gutted. The inside walls were stripped down to bare wood. The trapdoor was sealed with fresh cement. The lockers were gone. So were the crates. The steel door had been removed and bricked over. The entire basement vanished, like it had never existed. The headmistress stood at the entrance, flanked by lawyers. She smiled sweetly. There seems to be some confusion. Dormitory B is being remodeled. There's nothing here. You're welcome to look. They did. They found nothing. Hannah and I were taken to a safe facility that night. They said they'd open an investigation. Said they'd contact our parents. Said they'd take care of us. But I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe us. Or worse, they were afraid. 2 weeks later, Bloom Girls Academy closed for renovations. Indefinitely. The media called it a financial restructuring. No mention of Hannah. No mention of me. No mention of the disappearances. It was like the whole thing had been scrubbed from reality. A month passed. Then another. Then, one cold Thursday morning, I received a package in the mail. No return address. No stamp. Just a brown envelope. Inside were 2 things. 1. A freshly printed list. 50 student names. 50 headshots. All current students from a new school, Westmore Academy for Girls. 2. A sticky note. Handwritten. The list never ends. You were lucky. They'll be watching again soon. I don't sleep with the lights off anymore. Every night, I check under my bed. And every night, I hear it tap, tap, tap.